OK, synchronise watches, everybody, because it's just under 10 hours before 6 o'clock, and that is when Boris Johnson will be telling us what's going to happen on so-called Freedom Day. He will tell the English public, we think, that they're going to have to wait up to another month, another 4 weeks for so-called Freedom Day. Obviously, after this rapid rise in cases of the Delta variant that was first detected in India.
A delay will infuriate lockdown sceptics on the Tory backbenches who are concerned about the impact on businesses and fear the government will never feel confident enough to lift restrictions. Health Minister Edward Argar joins us now. Mr Argar, we can ask you directly what you are going to be announcing this evening, and I suspect you'll say we'll wait until this evening. But do you understand the concern of those who think another delay of 4 weeks is going to massively impact business, hospitality, weddings, for instance?
Morning, Susanna, and you're right. I mean, I've been on your show a number of times and you read exactly correctly. I'm not able to preempt what the PM's going to say. But to your point there, absolutely, were there to be a delay, were that to be necessary because of the rising cases, you're absolutely right. I do entirely appreciate, and I know the Prime Minister does too, the impact that will have on businesses which are most affected by the current restrictions that remain in place, but also individuals and couples who have planned a wedding, often probably on many dates, scratched it through, had to reschedule it. And I am acutely sensitive to that, as I know the Prime Minister is. On that, there are
50,000 couples who've either delayed, cancelled their weddings, whatever, my own family included. Can you give us, I know you can't comment on detail, but we are hearing strong messages this morning that there will be some kind of exemption for weddings. Can you give any kind of comment on that?
Morning, Richard. On that, all I can say, I'm afraid, is I know that is a particular issue. The plight of those individuals is something the Prime Minister is particularly sensitive to, and you should expect to hear something from him on that when he speaks later today.
Well, that sounds like a yes. I'll take that. I'll take that.
It's not a yes. It's not a no, Richard.
No.
It's a listen to the PM.
OK, but that's interesting. You are not ruling out the restrictions staying... you are not ruling out a lifting of restrictions on weddings, receptions, parties and numbers.
What I'm saying, Susanna, is I know that this is an issue the Prime Minister is acutely sensitive to, and who wouldn't be? We all are. And therefore, when he makes his announcement, it is one of the things he will have considered, I know, over the weekend, very, very carefully in that context.
Sorry, Susanna. Oh, no, I was going to say, it's a very weird situation, because wherever you are in the UK, the rules are different on weddings, and we have the strictest rules here in England. I mean, is that one of the other reasons that maybe he's under a little bit of pressure to loosen up?
Well, I think what we saw last year when the whole country, in a sense, went into lockdown at the same time, it was same rules for everyone. As we've eased lockdown in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and England, each government has come out of it in slightly different ways, with a slightly different balance being struck. And I think that's what we're seeing there. But I think the reason that the issue of weddings has attracted such a prominence in this context is because it has a very human impact and a financial one, of course, on those couples who want to get married, who've planned it, psyched themselves up, geared themselves up for their special day, and then had to postpone it. So I don't think anyone could be unsympathetic to that situation.
Well, I have to say that my son and his fiancée are watching this programme. I think they'll be picking up a positive vibe on this, but as you say, you can't actually confirm it. But I think we're getting a sort of hint here, and that's good news for couples. Setting marriages aside, setting weddings aside, here's what I think a lot of people are going to be really concerned about tonight at 6 o'clock. If Boris Johnson says, sorry guys, weddings aside, it's another month, another 4 weeks. I know I'll be thinking, oh yeah? And what about after that? Will there be another push forward and another push forward? And what if we get another variant coming in? I mean, will it really be, if it is as has been totally reported across the media spectrum today, if it is another 4 weeks, will that be it?
Well, there's 2 points I'd make there, Richard. Firstly, the reason, were there to be a delay, and the reason the Prime Minister's considering this very carefully at the moment is because he's been clear that each step we've taken so far, he is firm that they are irreversible steps, because once we've opened up, he wants the country to be able to move forward with confidence. That's why he's considering whether, for the sake of 4 more weeks, that's the right thing to do to avoid putting anything else at risk. The other key thing is what those 4 weeks would buy us in terms of time were he to go down that route, which is the time to get the extra second jabs in people's arms. And vaccination is the key, which allows us and has allowed us to move out of the restrictions. If you've got one jab, that's about 33% effective against the Delta variant. Once you've got two, it looks like that's about 81% effective. That's a big difference. And it's the vaccine that allows us to break that link between the virus and infections. And I think we've got to recognise as a country, as a world, the virus, we won't be able to achieve zero COVID. It's not a practical proposition. No. We need to learn to live with this disease. But what the vaccine does is it breaks that chain between that virus and hospitalisations and sadly deaths, and that's the key bit. So we've got to get those second jabs in people's arms.
And you reckon then that if it is another month, and it looks pretty certain that's what it's going to be, if it is another month, that'll be enough. That'll be just the extra time that we need to sort out the protection from the vaccines once and for all and to break that chain. And that'll be the end of it. There won't be any more extensions after the 4 weeks.
Well, my intention, my view is I'd like to see the restrictions gone as soon as it's possible to do so and as soon as it's safe to do so. On the vaccinations point, Richard, the run rate of second jabs over the weekend, I think, was around 275,000 a day. On weekdays, that tends to be higher, a bit higher than that. Doing the maths, if you can slightly increase that run rate, you close the gap between the 41 million people who've had one jab and the 29 million or so who've had both. You close that extra 10 or so million gap if you keep that run rate high and around, a little bit above that current level. And that's what we're working to do.
What's the threshold?
In terms of, sorry, Susanna?
In terms of percentage?
Well, at the moment, what we're looking at, so with those people who've had the first jab, that's about 75, 78%, and about 55, 56% who've had both jabs. If we can get that up to 75, 78%, okay. That gives us much greater confidence in breaking that link. Okay, but there are the four tests, so that it's not just about the percentage. It's not an arbitrary percentage.
This is what I was going to say. What happens then if there's another variant? Do we then have to work out if these current jabs are effective against a new variant? Because it takes some time before a variant becomes a variant of concern. And then is that the justification? Will that be a justification for rolling on the lockdown restrictions?
On my point entirely.
Well, my view is, in the nature of this disease, in the nature of viruses like this, for them, it's a game of cat and mouse. We come up with a vaccine, they try to evade it, we need to update the vaccine. My understanding at the moment is if we get this vaccine or these vaccines in people's arms, that gives us a very strong level of protection against all the variants we've seen so far. So there's a degree of confidence there that vaccines will be effective. And we've got in parallel, which you may have seen reported in some papers, a lot of research being done, the so-called vaccine library, where in real time we will be able to start updating and tweaking the vaccine, as we do with the flu vaccine every year, to keep up with new variants.
But the other concern is not just, as Richard and I are concerned about, that another variant could extend lockdown, it's also that you'll use it as a reason for us not to travel. People are thinking about booking holidays. What is your current advice about the possibility of going on holiday abroad after the lockdown restrictions are lifted domestically?
Well, if it's any help, I totally understand people wanting to get away on holiday. I totally understand the travel industry wanting people to travel. For my part, I will be spending my summer holidays at home in sunny Leicestershire rather than going abroad. And the advice remains the case that basically people shouldn't be travelling for leisure at the moment to any of those amber list countries or the red list countries.
Susanna's question is, will that change? Will we see, if we do come out of this in 4 weeks' time, will we see a lessening of the restrictions on travel? Will we see more orange zones going green?
The straight answer to that, Richard, I think it's too early to answer that question. It's too early to tell, I'm afraid. We'll see what the Prime Minister says later and we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. But I'm afraid, straight answer to a straight question, I fear it's too early to answer that.
Oh, I always like a straight answer to a straight question. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Richard.
You've still got your trip booked there, haven't you?
Listen, We're hoping that it'll be possible to go to France on green. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to know.
But you're determined to go to France.
We've
even
got it
if
planned,
it's amber.
and we are considering it very strongly, because if we did go, we would absolutely follow all the government regulations and guidelines and tests and quarantine and everything. And I do, like a lot of people, find it difficult to see why we have a country on an amber list instead of a green list. If you're still actually allowed to go, but the advice is you shouldn't. It's, as we said on Friday,
You
it's
wouldn't
very
be breaking the law, because you would be sticking by the letter of the law.
I know
You
lots
would-
of people who are going to Portugal at the moment, and that's orange.
Yeah, well, and of course they might have booked those trips when
Many of
Portugal
them
was
did.
green,
Yeah.
which made it even more confusing.
Yep.